I built a dynamic timer system in Home Assistant that allows you to choose a custom timer length and apply it to any number of timers. Each timer performs a specific action when it begins,
Mike's laptop added,
and another when it ends.
Mike's laptop removed.
And this has been saving us a ton of time. But first, why do we even need these dynamic timers? Let's find out. We live full-time in our DIY smart van, and we often find ourselves way off the grid exploring North America! Still, we need to stay connected. Shar recently earned her TEFL certification to teach English as a second language, and yes, we celebrate. Since then, she has been teaching her classes remotely using Google Meet. And now that Smarty Van has over 10,000 subscribers, I've been having tons of video calls with potential sponsors. Here's the real issue. Video chatting requires super low latency and minimal packet loss. Yeah, I can't really hear what you're saying. Can you hear me? The problem we're solving with dynamic timers is that we use a feature in our Peplink router called SpeedFusion Connect. It bonds Starlink and cellular into one connection and sends redundant packets across both to keep our video calls rock solid. It works great, but it costs us extra data, and it's only really worth using for latency-sensitive calls. So the real question is, how do we use timers to use SpeedFusion only when we need it? Here's the annoying thing. I used to have to log into the Peplink admin interface, dig through the SpeedFusion settings, find my laptop in the list, add it to the tunnel, then do the same thing for Shar. And when the call was over, I'd have to go undo it all. Inevitably, I'd forget, and well, yeah, it became a mess.
Stupid, forgetful Michael.
Now I just pick a timer length and choose whose timer to start. This one adds my laptop to the SpeedFusion tunnel. This one adds Shar's. When the timer expires, her laptop or mine gets automatically removed from the tunnel. Need more time? No problem. Choose a new duration and tap the timer again. And all of this is handled by one single script, even with multiple timers running at once, and that's the real magic. Even better, I'm going to show you how to combine these scripts, entities, and commands into one clean YAML file to level up your Home Assistant organization. So, how do we build this? You could go to the UI and add multiple timer helpers and an input number, then go over to the script interface and start adding actions to interact with those helper entities. But if you want to keep your idea organized and all in one place, I'm going to show you my preferred method, which is to use packages. Packages allow you to write YAML for multiple domains like input numbers, timers, and scripts all in one file to keep your project organized. If you're not familiar with packages, I'll link to a short video that I made that will show you how to get that set up. Next, I'll show you the exact YAML needed to make your own dynamic timers in Home Assistant. But first, a huge thanks to top-tier Smarty Van members who make this channel possible. We really appreciate you. If you want to support the channel directly, click the join button down below, or if you want to join the long list of Smarty Van sponsors, shoot us an email. Alright, I've created a SpeedFusion Timers YAML file in my Peplink packages directory. Inside, I'm defining an input number. This is the entity we'll add to the dashboard to select our timer length. In our case, I chose hours as the unit with a minimum of a half hour, a max of 5 hours, and a step of a half hour. You could configure this however you like. I've also set an icon so I don't have to choose one in the UI. Then we set up our timers, one for myself and one for Shar. They get a name, an icon, and restore is set true so that the timer continues on Home Assistant restarts. We'll be using the MAC address of each of our laptops to configure the SpeedFusion tunnel. This next bit is a sneaky way to assign the MAC address of each of our laptops as attributes of the timers themselves. If we get a new laptop or need to change the MAC address, we can update it here. You could also create input text helpers to store the MAC address for your laptop so that you could easily update it in the Home Assistant UI. But the reality is we'll have these laptops for years. Plus, you may not even be using dynamic timers for Peplink, so this part may not matter to you. But it is kind of cool that you can arbitrarily add attributes to any entity. Alright, so we've added a MAC address as an attribute to each timer, and then we create a script. The default script mode is single and won't work for managing multiple timers. The trick is to set the mode to parallel to allow simultaneous runs of a single script. Here we define a field to be sure a specific timer is attached to a given run of this script. Fields are user configurable inputs that allow you to pass data to a script at runtime. Our field is called which timer, and it allows us to select an entity in the timer domain. If we look at the Actions tab in the Developer Tools, we can see how a field looks in the UI. A select is provided and has been limited to the timer domain. Next, we have the sequence. A sequence is a list of actions that the script will perform. Here you can customize the actions for your use case. First, there are variables to set the timer length from the input number we defined above. Then the MAC address that we added as an attribute of the timer. Then we start the appropriate timer using the which timer selector field. Don't worry, I'll show you how this works when we build a dashboard. The duration of the timer comes from our input number via the hours variable. Then we have a REST command action that sends the MAC address as data. This is where you would perform any action you want when your timer begins. In our case, we are interacting with the Peplink API to add a MAC address to the SpeedFusion Connect tunnel. Then we call a REST command to apply the Peplink configuration changes. Then we wait for the timer to become idle. This happens when a timer is canceled or finishes. I set the timeout to 12 hours and continue on timeout to false, so this script run will end if nothing happens for 12 hours. When the timer becomes idle, then the next action will occur. This is the action that you'd want to have happen when your timer ends. In our case, I'm sending another REST command to remove the MAC address from the SpeedFusion Connect tunnel. Then I call the apply changes command again. Finally, you can see the 3 REST commands that I use to hit the Peplink API endpoints to add and remove clients to the SpeedFusion tunnel, as well as apply configuration changes. And for the Peplink pros out there, yes, we tested cloud app routing. It's great when it works, but we found it hasn't been 100% reliable, while routing by LAN client is rock solid. If SaaS routing works for you, that's awesome. If you're interested in accessing your Peplink API with Home Assistant, I made an entire video detailing how you can authenticate with your router and make API calls. I'll link to that down below. I'll also drop some links for Peplink routers and RoamLink multi-carrier SIM cards. The whole idea here is that you can make your own dynamic timers by modifying the actions in the script to do what you need them to do. It could be to set a certain lighting scene, or turn off Starlink or your inverter, or perhaps set a heater to run for a fixed period of time. You can perform any action that Home Assistant supports when the timer begins or ends. This framework will allow you to create custom dynamic timers to do anything you want, and I'll link to my full YAML configuration down below. Let me know in the comments how you're using dynamic timers. Okay, none of this is very useful without a dashboard, and there's a very important step to make all of this work that you don't want to miss. First, we'll add a tile for our timer length and add the numeric input feature. You can even change this to a slider if you prefer. Then we'll add a tile and select My Timer. And this is the key to the whole thing. We'll set the tap interaction to start the script we wrote. We'll choose Perform Action, then choose Our Script. And here you can see we now get to choose whose timer to start, and this is the whole trick. That field we defined earlier is what tells the script exactly which timer to act on. I'll choose My Timer, then click Save. Then repeat this setup for your additional timers. Now we can start either timer, and that single script we wrote can handle them both. You can create as many timers as you want. Choose a duration, choose a timer, and perform the actions. If you enjoyed this video, here's another one I think you might enjoy, and until next time, safe travels.